Good afternoon, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. Alright, let's get right into the news here because there's quite to cover on this Tuesday. And last night was a huge victory for President Trump and, of course, the MAGA candidates that were out there, eliminating the rhinos from competition, which was a fantastic evening, all the way around Trump brand aboard. With all of his endorsements won 2 primary races across the country in Michigan, and in Arizona specifically. And of course, in some of the other states who were also having primaries. This was a show of force showing that Trump still has political muscle obviously, and was able to outmuscle the rhinos who dumped millions into this race in order to try to prevent any more American first candidates from arriving in Congress, which they really don't want to happen, because it will upset the balance of power of the swamp and unit party. So let's go and dive into it. Coming to us from the American Thinker over here. It states this here for President Trump this morning. It's got to be sweet. He endorsed candidates 1 month, or it's just give me one after another one over the GOP candidates in Tuesday's primaries. Those covered covenant endorsements went for congressional seats in Arizona, Michigan, and sort of Missouri, where it appeared that President Trump endorsed both candidates with the first name Eric. That county is still taking. We're still on. And places like Washington, so many have not been full sweep, but it came very, very close. Many candidates of Trump endorsed were political upstart or not incumbents which have a harder time of winning. So these primary victories were all the more impressive. The New York Times has a real-time graphic showing or report with all the results of the primaries over at Axios, which is getting more and more left-wing lately. There seemed to be some gnashing of teeth. Here was their third story in the morning email newsletter lineup. Republican voters in 5 states largely sided with former President Trump in yesterday's primary races. Why it matters. The backing of Trump picks over Republican lawmakers to challenge them. Single GOP voters continue alliance to the former president. They are right on that. They forgot to include a share link on that item but had share link. On the other stories lined up, the sweet spots were in 2 places to candidates who lost were characters who voted to impeach him in Arizona. The election integrity champion who knows very well that fraud has happened in that state and is against it won to Secretary of State primary race handedly. It may not have been a full sweep in Washington state with the impeachment-happy congressional members is still counting, but it seems to have come close. So here's some examples. Trump and Peacher Representative Pierre Peter Monner of Western Michigan lost out of Trump-endorsed John Gibbs, who is a political newbie. Trump-endorsed Blake Masters won the GOP primary to challenge Democrat Mark Kelly for the Senate in Arizona. A hideous entrenched character by the name of Rusty Bowers, who was the term-limited state House Speaker, just lost the primary for state Senate seat in Arizona, after a string of anti-electoral integrity moves on his part, as well as his collaborations with Democrats against GOP voter wishes to Trump-endorsed State Senator David Farnsworth. Trump also endorsed Kari Lake took the lead, and accounting for the governor's primary race. In Arizona, after over Mike Pence has endorsed Karen Taylor Robinson. And we'll probably have the GOP, which it has been announced that she has won Arizona. Best of all, Arizona is that Georgia Republicans nominate Mark Fishman as its candidate for Secretary of State, and it wasn't close. Axios put out it this way. Trump endorsed Mark Fishman, an unrelated supporter of the 2020 election, as conspiracy theories will be the Republican nominee for the Secretary of State, Arizona's top election official. So a good clean tweet for Trump, good clean tweet for MAGA and America First, which means singles that the rhino is endangered species in the Republican Party, which it needs to be, and President Trump's endorsements continue to win. So fantastic. Let me know if you're in any of those states who had primaries last night and if your MAGA candidate won. And Nancy Pelosi, her most recent trip to Taiwan. Democrats are making very bold statements on Twitter calling Nancy Pelosi a hero for democracy. Oh, how historic for the Speaker of the House to make a move supporting democracy by heading to Taiwan. But I think probably what most people are asking themselves with this most recent Nancy Pelosi trip is why now? And what's the point? What's the point of sending incoherent, half the time drunk and incompetent Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan during such an unstable time? I mean, first sending Kamala Harris to Guatemala, then sending Kamala Harris to Ukraine. We know what happened in those 2 instances. And now Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. What's the point and what good can come? I can't think of a single positive thing, but apparently neither can the New York Times. New York Times wrote why Pelosi, his visit to Taiwan is utterly reckless, nothing good will come of it, claiming that the trip was purely symbolic. But to be completely honest here, considering this as Nancy Pelosi, I think a lot of people are thinking something completely different. You know, the United States just passed a semiconductor bill right as Nancy Pelosi, his husband, bought 25,000 shares of Nvidia. He has since sold them. I believe he sold them at a loss, but still who knows whether that was due to political pressure or what else. And now all of a sudden, as they're passing their CHIPS Act, I think it just hit Joe Biden's destiny, signed it into law. Nancy Pelosi makes a trip to Taiwan, which I believe is the world's biggest semiconductor manufacturer, or one of the biggest, definitely top 3. Certainly not a coincidence. No, of course not. A lot of people making the observation that Nancy Pelosi is not going to Taiwan for the preservation of world democracy but rather for her own business interest. But really, speculation aside, the point is I don't think anyone needed this, and certainly the Taiwanese didn't need this. Year's the former Taiwanese ambassador to New Zealand lashing out at Nancy Pelosi, his visits to Taiwan. Nani pills, you need some of these. That's the only time you got matzah. So Taiwan means Taiwan. I mean Suda. So how are you? I mean, so much of it. That's our new media maker, and I thought Helen Itanium was a gentleman thumping up to the man who cheat high on the top 10 sounds that you can hide all over. The United States has an icon for the needy Pelosi that Gamma encodes in Zanla Unitas Taiwan pushy on it. This is a T.O. Joe Hall, Johor for handmade Ola, nay T all eyes on that deal. Whoa. Worried that she's pouring fuel on the flames and possibly provoking war. Now Taiwan sees cyber attack and Chinese warplanes as Pelosi lands in the country, the People's Republic of China also responding by banning over 100 food products from Taiwan. But Nancy Pelosi claims Taiwan visit is an unequivocal statement. Well, if that's the case, then why is it that the American government represented by Mr. John Kirby just said this? Everyone listen to this. Repeatedly said that we oppose any unilateral changes to the status quo from either side? We have said that we do not support Taiwan independence. And we have said that we expect cross-strait differences to be resolved by peaceful means. We have communicated this directly. Okay, we do not support Taiwan independence. Which one is it? Probably the better question is, what is the point of what Nancy Pelosi is doing? It's certainly a no benefit to the Taiwanese people, Taiwanese business, and certainly I see no benefit to global stability or the American people. So what's the point? A self-serving Democrat trying to cement her legacy as a politician? No, of course, it couldn't be that Nancy Pelosi, who seems to be chief strategist of the Democrat movement, especially during election season, trying to generate some good press or really any press at all surrounding the Democrat Party or the current Democrat administration right ahead of the midterms. No, of course not. Couldn't be that. Obviously, it's some sort of self-serving political stunt that serves absolutely no one and will accomplish absolutely nothing. But I think that for the most part, for most of you is, of course, fairly obvious. I don't think really much else needs to be said, you get it. But the one thing that we absolutely have to discuss is just how much of a failure American-Chinese relations have been over the past 22 years. The number sounds pretty specific, 22 years. Why not 20? Why not 18? Well, because what we are witnessing right now is more proof as to just how much of the disaster it was in the year 2000. To accept China into the World Trade Organization, allowing a communist dictatorship to enter the World Trade Organization or enter world trade and the world economy in general has been an utter disaster. We've enriched a country to the tune of trillions of dollars, but not just any country. A country that seeks to destroy us, a country that laughs in your face, a country that infiltrates your universities, your government lobbyists groups to plant seeds of destruction and seeds of chaos into your government's economy and culture, a country that when a politician, and not just any politician, the third in line to the presidency in succession, the Speaker of the House, makes a trip to Taiwan, they threaten to shoot down her plane. That is the country that Bill Clinton tried to normalize relations with and trade and allow him to the World Trade Organization. What an absolute disaster. Look at Detroit and other cities in town in the Rust Belt, the economic devastation and the loss of manufacturing jobs that we've seen over the last 2 decades. And you question, well, what happened here? Why doesn't America produce any more? Why doesn't America do anything? China? Bill Clinton the year 2000? That's the answer. And now we're in this position where we have all these feckless politicians not just in the United States, but across the Western world bowing down to China, doing their bidding and selling out the interest of the American people to a country that is growing with a stated mission to overtake and destroy you. Sounds like an absolutely genius plan. To me, our ancestors went to war to stop communism, and modern-day politicians are ensuring and fighting to keep the current status quo, which enriches these communist dictators and communist leaders to enrich themselves by billions upon billions. What could possibly go wrong? China is currently on the path of totally seizing control of Southeast Asia. A country like Vietnam doesn't stand a chance with the incredible might of the Chinese Communist Party on their northern border. First, the fall of Saigon and the loss of the Viet Cong. And then the enabling of the Chinese Communist regime really just solidifies my belief that the Western world in general, all of the West, is led by a bunch of corrupt incompetents. And this most recent situation with Nancy Pelosi highlights it more than anything else. This is why Donald Trump was so popular. I mean, just think of how much of a disaster ceding all of this manufacturing power and economic power to the PRC has been over the last 20 years. There is a common belief that you hear all over the place in Western countries that we can't manufacture things anymore, that we just can't do it. It's just not possible. Well, it's not possible, because that's what your politicians have made you believe. You know, just imagine what if all the money that we sent over to China buying their goods. What if that money stayed in the American economy and circulated here? Maybe, just maybe, there would be more jobs and more money circulating in the American economy and in the Western economy. People would maybe have the extra income or the ability to purchase American-made products or products made from America's greatest allies, actual reciprocal trade deals, good deals, not one-sided deals, good paying wages and more money staying within this system, rather than being shipped abroad, but your government keeps selling you out. And it's marking the death of the American entrepreneurial spirit. What happens to a country's economy when a country stops making things? Nothing? Good. I'll tell you that one. And what happens to a country when it's being siphoned of its wealth? Democrats not only enabling communist dictatorship, creating American dependence on these foreign trade adversaries that are built off the backs of slave labor and child labor, American dependence, an absolutely disgusting phenomenon, rather than American independence, while simultaneously doing the same thing at the southern border with the Mexican cartels, selling death and destruction to those same communities that have been ravaged by the loss of manufacturing jobs, the massive fentanyl crisis that we're currently seeing, and more siphoning of billions upon billions of American dollars going south across the border straight yet again into the pockets of a corrupt government and criminal organizations. Washington doesn't represent you. Washington has sold your soul. And while Democrats are hailing Nancy Pelosi as a hero, that is the one thing that is becoming more clear than ever, in my mind: a country that is threatening to shoot out of the air an American Air Force plane carrying a top American official. That is the country that the U.S. government has enabled for the past 2 decades and some change. Meanwhile, all we do is tiptoe around all their sensitive issues, like editing out a Taiwanese flag of Tom Cruise's Code, the most recent movie release in the series of Top Gun Maverick. Let's not offend the PRC. We host their leaders in the White House. We open our universities for them. We welcome them with open arms to buy all the farmland they want, and buy all the real estate they want, buy whatever businesses they want. Let them operate TikTok in the American market, and what do you get in return? They threatened violence, and frankly, if you ask me, a terrorist attack on the third most powerful American politician, the Speaker of the House, absolutely disgraceful, and regular people just don't seem to care equally as disgraceful. Thank you for watching the video. I wish